Hey, my name is Marcus. I'm 26 and I work as a junior accountant at a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Chicago. My days are pretty predictable. Wake up at 7, grab a bagel from the bodega on the corner, take the red line to the office, and spend 8 hours staring at spreadsheets in a cubicle that smells like old carpet and microwaved lunch. I share a studio apartment in Logan Square with a Murphy bed that doesn't quite fold up right and a radiator that clangs like it's angry at the world. It's not much, but it's mine. I don't have a lot going on outside of work, just enough savings to cover rent and the occasional deep dish pizza on Fridays. No romantic prospects, no exciting hobbies. I've gotten comfortable with the rhythm of a life that's steady, if a little hollow. It's been almost 3 years since my last real relationship. Not because of some dramatic breakup or devastating heartbreak. I just got tired. Tired of dating apps where everyone's profile looked the same, tired of first dates that felt like job interviews, tired of getting excited about someone only to watch them slowly lose interest when they realized I wasn't some high-earning finance bro with a lakefront condo. My last girlfriend, Sarah, left because she said I lacked ambition. "You're just coasting, Marcus," she'd said, packing her stuff into a duffel bag. "I need someone who wants more." I didn't blame her. I'd stopped wanting more years ago. Wanting less hurt easier. That all shifted when my boss, Rachel Monroe, called me into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel was 34, the senior director of operations, and easily the most competent person I'd ever worked with. She had this ability to walk into a chaotic meeting and within 10 minutes have everyone aligned and productive. She was sharp, direct, and never wasted words. People respected her, some feared her, and everyone knew she was destined for the C-suite. She dressed immaculately, always in tailored blazers and clean lines, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail that never had a strand out of place. She was beautiful in this intimidating, untouchable way, like a piece of art you admire from a distance but never dare approach. We'd worked together for 2 years. But our interactions were strictly professional. "Marcus, can you pull the Q2 reports?" "Yes, Rachel." "Marcus, the projections need adjusting." "On it, Rachel." She was my boss. I was her subordinate. The line was clear, uncrossable. I'd never even considered anything else. So when her assistant told me Rachel wanted to see me at 4:30, my first thought was that I'd screwed something up. I knocked on her office door, palms slightly sweaty, mentally reviewing every spreadsheet I'd touched that week. "Come in," she called, her voice steady as always. I stepped inside. Her office was pristine, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, minimalist furniture, a single framed photo of her with her 2 younger brothers at what looked like a wedding. She was sitting at her desk, but something was different. Her blazer was draped over her chair. She was in a simple white button-down, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her hair was down, which I'd never seen before. She looked tired. Not physically, but in a deeper way, like someone who'd been running on fumes for too long. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat, trying to read her expression. Was I getting fired? Promoted? Neither seemed likely. She was silent for a long moment, just looking at me with this unreadable intensity. Then she spoke, her voice quieter than usual. "Marcus, can I ask you something personal?" I blinked, caught off guard. Sure." "Do you date?" The question hung in the air, completely out of left field. I fumbled for words. "I mean, not really. Not lately." "Why?" She looked down at her desk, her jaw tightening slightly. "I don't. Haven't in years. And I've been thinking about why that is." I had no idea where this was going. "Okay." She stood up abruptly, walking to the window, her back to me. The late afternoon light cast her in silhouette. "I'm successful, Marcus. I make good money. I'm respected in this industry. I've worked incredibly hard to get here." She paused, her shoulders rising and falling with a deep breath. "But I'm also completely alone. And lately, I've been wondering if it's because of this." Before I could ask what she meant, she turned around and began unbuttoning her shirt. My brain short-circuited. "Rachel, what are you?" "Just wait," she said, her voice firm but trembling slightly. She opened her shirt, revealing a white camisole underneath. But it wasn't the camisole I noticed. It was her torso. Her entire midsection was covered in scars, thick, raised lines crisscrossing her abdomen and ribcage, some surgical and precise, others jagged and irregular. They were extensive, mapping a history of pain I couldn't begin to understand. She looked at me, her eyes unflinching but filled with a vulnerability I'd never seen in her. Car accident when I was 22. Drunk driver hit us head-on. I was in the passenger seat. My boyfriend at the time was driving. He walked away with a concussion. I spent 8 months in and out of surgery. I couldn't speak. My throat had gone completely dry. "No one wants to date me," she said, her voice matter-of-fact, like she was presenting data in a meeting. "Tried. I've put myself out there. But the moment they see this, they can't handle it. They say they can, but I see it in their eyes. The pity. The discomfort. The way they pull away." She buttoned her shirt back up slowly, her hands steady despite the weight of what she'd just shared. "I've accepted that this is just how it is. I'm undateable." The words hit me like a physical blow. Here was this brilliant, accomplished woman, someone I'd admired from afar for 2 years, standing in front of me with the most devastating resignation I'd ever heard. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding my system. I walked around the desk, closing the distance between us. "Rachel," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked at me, confusion flickering across her face. "What?" "I'm not going anywhere," I repeated, holding her gaze. "You just showed me something incredibly personal, something painful, and you think that makes you undateable? That's the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." Her eyes widened slightly, disbelief warring with something else, something fragile and hopeful. "I don't pity you," I continued, my voice firm. "I don't feel uncomfortable. What I feel is honored. That you trusted me enough to show me. And if you think scars are what make you undateable, then you've been dating the wrong people." She stared at me for a long moment, her breath catching. Then, almost involuntarily, her eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, her professional armor trying to reassert itself, but I saw the cracks. "Marcus, you don't have to say that just to." "I'm not saying it to make you feel better," I interrupted gently. "I'm saying it because it's true. You're brilliant. You're driven. You're kind in ways people don't notice because you hide it behind competence. And yeah, you have scars. But they're just proof that you survived something most people couldn't." She let out a shaky breath, her hand coming up to cover her mouth. For the first time since I'd known her, Rachel Monroe looked genuinely vulnerable, stripped of the professional distance she wore like armor. "I don't know what to do with this," she whispered. "You don't have to do anything," I said softly. "Just know that I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere." We stood there in her office as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room. Something fundamental had shifted between us, a line crossed that could never be uncrossed. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something stir in my chest that I thought had died, a spark of genuine connection, fragile but undeniable. The days following that conversation were strange. Rachel and I didn't talk about what had happened in her office. We went back to our professional dynamic, at least on the surface. "Marcus, can you review these numbers?" "Sure, Rachel." But there was something different now, a awareness that hummed beneath every interaction. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes, her expression unreadable, before she'd quickly look away. In meetings, I'd notice the way she'd pause when she said my name, like she was tasting it differently now. About a week later, she sent me an email at 6 p.m., right as I was packing up to leave. The subject line was blank. The message read, "Are you free tonight? Not work-related." I stared at my screen, my cursor hovering over the reply button. This was my boss. This was a line we probably shouldn't cross. But I thought about the look in her eyes when she'd shown me her scars, the raw honesty, the courage it took to be that vulnerable. I typed back, "Yes." "Where?" She replied immediately, "Lou Malnati's on Wells. 7:30, my treat." I got there 15 minutes early, anxious energy making it impossible to sit still in my apartment. The restaurant was busy, the smell of buttery crust and melted cheese filling the air. I spotted Rachel at a corner booth, already seated. She was dressed casually, well, casually for her, dark jeans and a soft gray sweater. Her hair was down again. She looked up when I approached, offering a small, tentative smile. "Hey," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "Hey," I replied, suddenly feeling awkward. "Thanks for inviting me." She nodded, fiddling with her water glass. "I wanted to apologize for putting you in that position last week. That was unprofessional of me." I leaned forward. "Rachel, you don't have to apologize. I'm glad you told me." She looked at me, searching my face for something. "Are you? Really? Because I've been replaying that moment over and over, and I keep thinking I made you uncomfortable, that I put you in an impossible situation." "You didn't," I said firmly. "Look, I get why you'd think that. But honestly, that conversation was the most real thing that's happened to me in years." She absorbed that, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. "I don't do this, Marcus. I don't open up. I don't invite coworkers to dinner. I don't let people in. Why did you this time?" She was quiet for a moment, considering. "Because when I looked at you after I showed you, you didn't look away. Everyone looks away eventually, but you didn't. And I couldn't stop thinking about that." The waitress interrupted to take our order. We got a deep dish to share, and the small act of choosing toppings together felt oddly intimate, a tiny negotiation that hinted at something more. After she left, Rachel leaned back, her guard lowering incrementally. "Can I tell you something else?" "Anything." The accident didn't just leave scars on the outside. It left me with chronic pain. Some days it's manageable. Other days it's like my entire torso is on fire. I've learned to hide it, to function through it. But it's always there, this constant reminder. I listened, not interrupting, giving her space to speak. "And dating," she continued, her voice dropping, "it's not just about showing someone the scars. It's about explaining that there will be days when I can't do certain things. Days when intimacy is painful. Days when I need to just lie still and breathe through it. What man wants to sign up for that?" "One who cares about you," I said simply. "The right person wouldn't see that as a burden. They just see it as part of who you are." She smiled sadly. "You're younger than me, Marcus. You don't have the baggage I do. You could date anyone." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Rachel, I haven't been on a date in 3 years. I spend my weekends alone in my studio apartment eating pizza and watching reruns. I'm not exactly fighting off suitors." She looked surprised. "Why not? You're smart, you're kind, you're—" She stopped herself, color rising in her cheeks. "I'm what?" I pressed, a slight smile tugging at my lips. She looked away. "You're a good person, Marcus. Better than you give yourself credit for." The pizza arrived, steaming and perfect. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before the conversation picked back up, flowing more easily now. We talked about everything but work, childhood memories, favorite books, the bizarre layout of Chicago streets. She told me about growing up with 2 younger brothers who she practically raised after their dad left. I told her about my mom, a nurse who worked double shifts to keep us afloat after my dad died when I was 12. "That's why you're so steady," she observed, pointing her fork at me. "You learned early how to keep your head down and push through." "Maybe," I admitted. "Or maybe I just got used to playing it safe." "Is that what you think you're doing now?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine directly. "Playing it safe?" I held her gaze. "No. This feels like the opposite of safe." Something shifted in her expression, a wall crumbling just a little more. "Good," she said softly. "I'm tired of safe." We stayed until the restaurant started closing, talking until the waitress came by with the check and a pointed look. Outside, the Chicago night air was crisp, the city alive with traffic and distant sirens. We stood on the sidewalk, neither of us quite ready to leave. "I live a few blocks from here," Rachel said, gesturing vaguely north. "Do you want to walk with me?" I nodded, and we started walking, our shoulders nearly brushing. The streets were busy, people spilling out of bars and restaurants, but it felt like we were in our own bubble. When we reached her building, a sleek high-rise in River North, she stopped and turned to me. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "For listening. For not making me feel like I was crazy." "You're not crazy," I said. "You're just human." She stepped closer, and for a moment I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she reached out and squeezed my hand, her fingers warm against mine. "Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Rachel." I watched her disappear into the lobby before turning and heading to the red line, my heart still racing, my hand still tingling where she'd touched it. Whatever this was, it was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I fell into a pattern. We'd have dinner once or twice a week, always somewhere low-key, always carefully avoiding any PDA or obvious displays of whatever we were becoming. At work, we maintained strict professionalism, though I started noticing little things, the way she'd linger when handing me documents, the small smile she'd give me when no one else was looking, the way she'd find excuses to stop by my desk. But we hadn't defined what this was. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't even really touched beyond that one-hand squeeze. It was like we were both terrified of shattering whatever fragile thing was growing between us. That changed on a Friday night in early November. We'd planned to get dinner, but Rachel texted me that afternoon, "Bad pain day. Can't make it. Sorry." I stared at the message, worry gnawing at me. I texted back, "Do you need anything?" "No. Just need to rest." I couldn't focus for the rest of the day. At 5, I left the office and stopped at a Thai place near her apartment, picking up tom kha soup, something gentle and warm. Then I headed to her building, texting from the lobby, "I'm downstairs. I brought soup. You don't have to let me up, but I wanted you to have it." A long pause. Then, "Come up. 28th floor, unit 2804. My heart hammered as the elevator climbed. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. She was in oversized sweats and an old Northwestern hoodie, her face bare of makeup, hair in a messy bun. She looked exhausted, pain etched in the lines around her eyes. "You didn't have to do this," she said, but stepped aside to let me in. Her apartment was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river, modern furniture in soft grays and whites. But she'd clearly been camping out on the couch, blankets piled, heating pad plugged in, bottles of medication on the coffee table. "Rough day?" I asked, setting the soup down in her kitchen. "One of the worst in a while," she admitted, lowering herself carefully back onto the couch. "The weather change triggers it sometimes." I grabbed bowls from her cabinet and ladled out the soup, bringing it to her. She took it gratefully, cradling the warm bowl in her hands. "Thank you," she said quietly. No one's ever done this before." "Really?" She shook her head. After the accident, people were supportive at first. But chronic pain isn't dramatic. It's not a one-time emergency. It's just this constant, invisible thing. People get tired of it. They stop asking. Eventually they stop calling. I sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance. "Well, I'm not people." She looked at me, her eyes welling up. "Why are you being so kind to me, Marcus? What do you get out of this?" The question caught me off guard. What do I get out of it? "Rachel, I get to spend time with someone brilliant and funny and real. I get to know you. That's not nothing." "But I come with so much baggage," she whispered. "The scars, the pain, the walls I've built. Why would you want to deal with any of that?" I set my soup down and shifted closer, angling my body toward hers. "Because those things don't define you. They're part of your story, but they're not the whole story. And honestly, I think you're worth dealing with whatever comes." A tear slipped down her cheek. She set her bowl down and covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I'd never seen her cry before, never seen her lose control like this. Instinctively, I moved closer, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, her face pressed against my chest as she cried, years of loneliness and pain and isolation pouring out. I held her, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, murmuring reassurances I wasn't even sure she could hear. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and wet, but there was something lighter in her expression, like she'd released some of the weight she'd been carrying. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her eyes. I don't usually fall apart like that. Don't apologize, I said gently. You're allowed to feel things, Rachel. You don't have to be strong all the time. She looked at me, really looked at me, and then she did something that took my breath away. She leaned forward and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, like she was afraid I might pull away. I didn't. I kissed her back, my hand coming up to cup her cheek, deepening the kiss just slightly. When we broke apart, she was breathing hard, her eyes searching mine. Was that okay? More than okay, I said, my thumb brushing along her jawline. But only if you're sure. I don't want you to feel like... I'm sure, she interrupted, her voice firm. I've never been more sure of anything. We spent the rest of the evening on her couch, her curled into my side, my arm around her shoulders. We watched some mindless movie neither of us paid attention to, just existing together in the quiet comfort of proximity. When the pain medication finally kicked in and she started to doze, I carefully extricated myself, intending to leave. Her hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Stay, she mumbled, half asleep. Please. I looked down at her, at the vulnerability written across her face, and I couldn't have said no if I'd wanted to. But I'll stay. I settled back onto the couch, and she curled against me, her breathing evening out as she fell asleep. I stayed awake for a while, looking out at the glittering Chicago skyline, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breathing against my side, and thinking that maybe, just maybe, playing it safe had been overrated all along. Things moved quickly after that night. We stopped pretending at work that nothing was happening, though we kept it professional. But everyone noticed. The way we'd arrive separately but leave together. The way she'd smile at me in meetings, genuine warmth replacing her usual crisp efficiency. The way I'd bring her coffee in the morning, made exactly how she liked it. We were careful. Company policy required disclosure of relationships between supervisors and direct reports, but Rachel was terrified of the gossip, the judgment. People will say I'm taking advantage of you, she worried one night over dinner at my apartment. That I'm abusing my position. Let them, I said, flipping the grilled cheese I was making for us. We know the truth. That's what matters. But she couldn't shake the anxiety. I understood, she'd worked so hard to build her reputation, to be taken seriously in a male-dominated industry. The idea of being reduced to that boss who dated her subordinate gutted her. The crisis came in early December. We'd been dating, if you could call it that, for about 6 weeks. We hadn't told anyone officially, but rumors were circulating. And then Rachel's ex showed up. His name was Derek. He was the one driving during the accident, the one who'd walked away mostly unscathed while she'd been shattered. They'd broken up a year after, him unable to handle the guilt, her unable to forgive the drinking. But apparently he'd gotten sober, and he wanted to make amends. Rachel told me about it after work, sitting in her car in the parking garage. He wants to meet. To apologize. He says he's been in therapy and he needs to do this for his recovery. Do you want to see him? I asked, trying to keep the jealousy out of my voice. She looked at me, conflict written across her face. I don't know. Part of me wants closure. But part of me is terrified that seeing him will undo all the progress I've made. Then don't go, I said simply. But what if I regret it? What if this is my chance to finally let go of that anger? I reached across the console and took her hand. Rachel, you don't owe him anything. Not your time, not your forgiveness, nothing. If you want to see him for yourself, that's different. But don't do it because you think you should. She squeezed my hand, grateful. Come with me. What? Come with me. I'll meet him, but I want you there. I need you there. The meeting was at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Derek was already there when we arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. He was handsome in that clean-cut, preppy way, wearing a button-down and khakis, his hair perfectly styled. When he saw Rachel, he stood, but froze when he noticed me beside her. Rachel, he said, his voice uncertain. I didn't realize you were bringing someone. This is Marcus, she said, her hand finding mine. My boyfriend. The word sent a thrill through me. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. Derek's face flickered with something, surprise, maybe a touch of jealousy. Nice to meet you, he said stiffly, extending a hand. I shook it, keeping my expression neutral. We sat, and Derek launched into his apology. It was clearly rehearsed, hitting all the therapy speak notes. He talked about his alcoholism, his guilt, his journey to sobriety. And then he said, I know I can never undo what happened. I know I left you alone when you needed me most. But I want you to know that I think about you every day. And if there's any way I can make it up to you, any way at all, I want to try. Rachel was silent for a long moment, her jaw tight. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. Derek, I appreciate you getting sober. I'm glad you're in a better place. But you need to understand something. You don't get to make this about you. My scars, my pain, my life, they're not your redemption story. Derek's face fell. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, she interrupted. You want me to absolve you, to tell you it's okay. But it's not. What you did, driving drunk, nearly killing me, and then leaving because you couldn't handle the guilt, that's on you. And I've spent years learning to live with the consequences while you've spent years trying to forgive yourself. I watched her, awed by her strength. I've moved on, Derek, she continued. I'm happy. I'm with someone who doesn't see my scars as a burden, who doesn't need me to be easy or convenient. So if you need forgiveness to complete your recovery, I hope you find it. But you're not going to get it from me. She stood and I stood with her. Derek looked gutted, but he nodded slowly. I understand. I'm sorry, Rachel. For everything. I know you are, she said, her voice softer now. Goodbye, Derek. We walked out together, and the moment we hit the sidewalk, Rachel let out a long breath, her entire body relaxing. Holy shit, she said, half laughing. I can't believe I just did that. You were amazing, I said, pulling her into a hug. She wrapped her arms around me, burying her face in my neck. Thank you for being there. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, I said, pulling back to look at her. But I'm glad I got to watch. That night, back at her apartment, Rachel was lighter than I'd ever seen her. We cooked dinner together, dancing around her kitchen to music from her phone, laughing at our terrible dance moves. After we ate, we ended up on her couch again, this time facing each other. I meant what I said, you know, she said, her fingers tracing patterns on my arm. About being happy. I am. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. Me too, I said, leaning forward to kiss her forehead. She pulled back slightly, her expression turning serious. I need to tell you something. My heart skipped. Okay. I'm falling in love with you, Marcus. I know it's fast. I know we're complicated. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. The words hung in the air between us, terrifying and exhilarating. I cupped her face, my thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I'm falling in love with you too, Rachel. Have been for a while now. Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Really? Really, I confirmed, kissing her softly. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years. Maybe ever. She kissed me back, deeper this time, her hands tangling in my hair. We stayed like that for a long time, trading kisses and whispered confessions, building something real and solid and true. Eventually, we ended up in her bedroom, moving slowly, carefully. She was nervous, I could feel it in the tension of her muscles, the way she hesitated before lifting her shirt. I stopped her, my hands gentle on hers. We don't have to, I said. Not tonight, not ever if you're not ready. I want to, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I'm just scared. Of what? That you'll see me fully and change your mind. That the reality won't match whatever you've built up in your head. I looked her straight in the eyes. Rachel, I've already seen you. The scars, the pain, the walls. And I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. She searched my face, looking for doubt and finding none. Slowly, she lifted her shirt over her head, then removed her bra, standing before me vulnerable and exposed. The scars were extensive, covering her torso in a roadmap of survival. But all I saw was strength. All I saw was her. I stepped closer, my hands hovering just above her skin. Can I touch you? She nodded, and I gently placed my palms on her sides, feeling the raised tissue under my fingers, feeling her warmth, her life. She shivered, and I leaned down, pressing soft kisses along her collarbone, her shoulder, the top of one scar. "You're beautiful," I whispered against her skin. "Every part of you." She let out a shaky breath, her hands coming up to grip my shoulders. "I believe you," she said, wonder in her voice. "God, Marcus, I actually believe you." We made love slowly, carefully, her guiding my hands, telling me what felt good and what didn't. It was intimate in a way I'd never experienced, vulnerable and raw and perfect. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "I love you," she said sleepily, the words easy now. "I love you too," I replied, kissing the top of her head. "And I'm not going anywhere." The next few months were the happiest of my life. Rachel and I officially disclosed our relationship to HR. There was paperwork, and I was transferred to report to a different supervisor to avoid any conflicts of interest. Some people gossiped, sure. A few made snide comments about me sleeping my way up the corporate ladder, even though my job hadn't changed at all. But most people were supportive, or at least professional enough to keep their opinions to themselves. Rachel stopped hiding. She wore short sleeves more often, stopped flinching when people's eyes lingered on her scars. One day in the break room, a new intern asked her about them. I watched from across the room, ready to intervene, but Rachel just smiled and said, "Car accident when I was younger. I'm lucky to be here." The intern nodded, unfazed, and went back to making coffee. Rachel caught my eye and grinned, a look of triumph on her face. We moved in together that spring. I gave up my studio and moved into her place, filling it with my modest furniture and books and the clutter she claimed to hate but secretly loved. We established routines, morning coffee together, walks along the Riverwalk on weekends, quiet evenings cooking dinner and talking about our days. On her bad pain days, I learned how to help, heating pad, medication, gentle massage, just being present. One Saturday morning in May, lying in bed with sunlight streaming through the windows, Rachel rolled over to face me. "I need to tell you something," she said, her expression serious. My heart clenched. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly. I've been thinking. Before I met you, I'd resigned myself to being alone. I thought that was just how my life would be. And I was okay with it, or I told myself I was. But now, having you, loving you, being loved by you, I realize how much I was missing. She reached out, taking my hand. "You gave me my life back, Marcus. Not because you fixed me or saved me, but because you saw me, loved me, and you stayed." I pulled her closer, emotion tightening my throat. "You gave me my life back too. Before you, I was just coasting, remember? You made me want more. Want better. Want us." She kissed me, soft and sweet. "So what do you say we stop playing it safe completely? Move to a bigger place, one that's ours, not mine. Maybe get a dog. Build a real life together." I grinned against her lips. I'd say that sounds perfect. And it was. It really was. Looking back now, I barely recognized the guy I was before Rachel called me into her office that day. The one who was content to coast, to play it safe, to expect nothing more from life than a steady paycheck and occasional pizza. Rachel didn't just change my life. She woke me up to the possibility that life could be more than just surviving. It could be vibrant and messy and complicated and beautiful. She taught me that scars don't make someone broken. They make them human. And that the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you fully, imperfections and all, and trust that they'll stay. I stayed. I'm still staying. And I always will be. Because when someone shows you who they really are, and you still love every part of them, that's not settling. That's not playing it safe. That's choosing the life you actually want, scars and all.